Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's the CD guy, Johnny Z here. Thank you so much for tuning back into the channel, and today it's time for the Ranking from Hell. I'm going to be ranking Pantera studio albums from worst to best. Pantera were the band that you guys voted for in the community tab when I asked you all last week what band studio albums you wanted to see me rank here today, and you guys voted for Pantera with 38% of the vote. Thank you to everybody who voted here, and that said, really excited to dive into the Pantera catalog. And just a quick heads up here, all the early Glamterra studio albums I do not own. I do have opinions on them, I will be talking about them, but I don't have anything to show up here on the screen because, they can be pretty hard to find these days. Those records are pretty elusive, and it's hard to find them in good condition for a good price these days. So, again, I don't own the early Glamterra studio albums, but I do have opinions on them. So that said, let's get started here with the ranking. Speaking of Glamterra, my least favorite Pantera record has got to be Metal Magic, their debut from 1983, and if we're able to look past the hideous album cover, there's not really much of substance here on this record in my opinion. Every band has to start somewhere, and for Pantera, they started off very much influenced by the likes of Kiss and Van Halen, Def Leppard as well, so it's pretty interesting to hear how their music would evolve over time, but here on this album, it's the band in their infancy, the production is very bad, and the songs don't really stand out in my opinion. Of course, you have Terry Glaze on lead vocals, well before Phil Anselmo would join the band, the original lead vocalist here, and I think Terry Glaze does a fine job. He's a fine vocalist, obviously not on the same level as Phil Anselmo, but does a fine job here on this album, but just in general, very lackluster debut by the band, and a very far departure from what they would become later on in their careers, so coming in at last place here, my least favorite Pantera record has got to be Metal Magic, their debut from 1983. Up next at number 8 here, I'm going to go with Projects in the Jungle from 1984, their sophomore record, and, you definitely do hear some improvement within the band from their debut to Projects in the Jungle, which is always good to see and hear, right, a band maturing in their sound, so that's very good, but in general, you have another lackluster record here by Pantera, trying their hand at the whole hair glam metal thing, still with Terry Glaze on lead vocals, just an album that I would really never reach for if I were in the mood for Pantera, so gotta put it in here towards the bottom of the list. Not bad, but just kind of lackluster and not indicative of the classic Pantera sound that would follow many years later here, but like I said before, every band has to start somewhere, and unfortunately these early albums are not really my thing, definitely not what I look for in Pantera, so coming in at number 8 here, I'm going to go with their sophomore record, Projects in the Jungle from 1984. Up next at number 7 here, I'm going to go with 1985's I Am the Night. This is the final Pantera record with Terry Glaze on lead vocals. He would be replaced by Phil Anselmo when it was time to release their next record, Power Metal. But this album here features Terry Glaze going out with what I think is a very solid record. This album definitely shows improvement by the band, definitely improving in their sound and maturing, which is exactly what you want to hear. And it's a fantastic pattern of events here following their first two albums, to see them maturing and improving with every release. Exactly what you want to hear. And this album, upon its release, was only available on cassette and vinyl. Any subsequent releases on CD are all bootlegs, so that goes back to what I was talking about before, about how some of these Glamterra records are very hard to find, super difficult to come by these days. So that said, there are some really solid standout tracks on here, in my opinion, such as Hot and Heavy, the title track, I Am the Night, Daughters of the Queen, Down Below, Right on the Edge, and Valhalla. So fine tracks on here, even though it's not top shelf Pantera. There's definitely some improvement here shown by the band on their third release. The final with Terry Glaze on lead vocals from 1985, coming in at number 7 here, I gotta go with I Am the Night. My number 6 on the list, Power Metal, is one of the most important albums in the Pantera catalog because it marks a pretty big transition for the band, with Phil Anselmo making his debut on lead vocals, replacing Terry Glaze here, and the band beginning to ditch the glam metal sound for a more traditional heavy metal sound here on this record. Phil Anselmo here channeling his inner Rob Halford from time to time on lead vocals as well. It's a fine album here, but definitely more interesting for me because it marks a pretty big transition for the band, and of course, their next record would be Cowboys From Hell, which would begin that classic period for Pantera from 1990 to 2000, but on this album here, it's a pretty big transition period for the band, with some solid tracks on here like Rock the World, the title track Power Metal, We'll Meet Again, Death Trap, Hard Ride as well, and Burn. So some fine tracks on here from beginning to end. It's definitely an interesting album for the band and very important in the Pantera catalog because, like I said, it marks a crucial transition for Pantera. Coming in at number 6 on the list, I'm going to go with 1988's Power Metal. From here on out, these albums are all incredible records and all part of that classic run from 1990 to 2000 here by the band. So even though one album may be ranked higher than the other, they are really close together, which means that the way I'm feeling today might be different from the way I feel next week if you were to ask me how to rank these albums, because one could be higher than the other next week, But the way I'm feeling today, kicking us off here with the top 5, I'm going to go with Pantera's Far Beyond Driven record from 1994. And even though it's my least favorite of that classic run of albums here, not to say it's a bad album at all, as a matter of fact, this is a great record record by the band, super heavy. Love the groove metal riffing here by Dimebag Darrell, and of course Phil Anselmo on lead vocals sounds amazing. And in general here, this album is fantastic with awesome tracks like Strength Beyond Strength, Becoming, 5 Minutes Alone, I'm Broken, Hard Line, Sunken Cheeks, Slaughtered, 25 Years, Shedding Skin, Use My Third Arm, and then Planet Caravan, the Black Sabbath cover here. Great album from top to bottom. Really heavy stuff, but again, something has to be near the bottom here when it comes to those classic albums, and even though my opinions could change next week because they're all really close together, the way I'm feeling today, coming in at number 5 here, I'm going to go with 1994's Far Beyond Driven. Coming up at number 4 here on the list, I'm going to go with 2000's Reinventing The Steel, an album that I've said many times is an extremely underrated and overlooked album in the Pantera catalog, and one that I think a lot of Pantera fans tend to sleep on and put towards the bottom of their list, but in my opinion here, this is classic Pantera with super heavy tracks on here like Hellbound, You Gotta Belong to It, Revolution Is My Name, Death Rattle is so heavy, We'll Grind That Axe for a Long Time, It Makes Them Disappear, and then I'll Cast a Shadow to close things out. This, of course, would be the final Pantera record as they would disband a couple years later, and then Dimebag Darrell would be assassinated in 2004, and I do hope that this stays the final Pantera album. I would definitely not be in support of the band putting out another record with the current lineup of Phil Anselmo, Rex Brown, Charlie Benante, and Zakk Wylde, because I just don't think you can release another Pantera album without the Abbott Brothers. Touring is one thing, and even that I'm not entirely in support of. I've shared my thoughts on that many times here on the channel, but to put out an album here without Dimebag and Vinnie would just be, in my opinion, the wrong thing to do. So I do hope that this stays the final Pantera record here. A great album if you're able to look past the awful album cover here. Great way for the band to go out in 2000 with Reinventing Steel, my number 4 on the list. Breaking into the top 3 now, and again, these albums are so hard to rank when you get into the classics, so that said, coming in at number 3, the way I'm feeling today, I gotta go with 1992's Vulgar Display of Power. Great album here, one of the most important in the groove metal genre as well, with tracks on here like Walk, Mouth for War, A New Level, This Love, Rise, No Good, Live in a Hole, Hollow as well, By Demons Be Driven, just great song after great song after great song on here on this record. An incredible album by Pantera, and again, one of the most important in the groove metal subgenre. See the guys on the back here. Fantastic lineup, fantastic record here. Great work by the band, and again, these are really close together, so even though it's number 3 here today, my 1 and 2 are also super close together as well, so very hard to rank these, but the way I'm feeling right now, coming in at number 3, I gotta go with 1992's Vulgar Display of Power. My 1 and 2 are pretty interchangeable and tend to flip-flop a lot, but for today here, coming in at number 2, I'm gonna go with 1996's The Great Southern Trendkill, a blisteringly heavy record by the band, and, you know, those albums just got heavier and heavier throughout the 90s, right? As they became more comfortable in their sound, started to mature as well in their songwriting process here. Definitely noticed those albums getting heavier and heavier, and that crescendos here on The Great Southern Trendkill. Hands down, Phil Anselmo's best vocal performance. He sounds so menacing here on this record, and when it comes to some of my favorite tracks from this album, I gotta go with the title track, War Nerve, Drag the Waters, Tens, which is just a super heavy song for one of the slower tracks on this album. 13 Steps to Nowhere as well. Floods, which might be my favorite Pantera song of all time. Got that amazing guitar solo by Dimebag Darrell to boot. And then also on here you have The Underground in America, another great song. In general here, this album is just so heavy, and Phil Anselmo sounds so menacing on this record here. It's got to be close to the top, so coming in at number 2 on the list, I'm going to go with 1996's The Great Southern Trendkill. You know, I don't include any live albums, any EPs, or any compilations on these countdowns because I'm ranking the studio albums only, but I'd be remiss not to at least mention here 101 Proof here by Pantera, official live, an incredible live album by the band, one of the all-time best in my opinion here. The guys are firing on all cylinders in a live setting with super heavy stuff on here like A New Level, Walk, Becoming, 5 Minutes Alone, War Nerve, Strength Beyond Strength, Domination, and Hollow. This Love as well, Cowboys From Hell, I'm Broken, Cemetery Gates. Then, of course, you have 2 studio tracks, Where You Come From and I Can't Hide. 2 great studio songs on here, and again, I'm not including any live albums, EPs, compilations, anything like that here on this list, but I'd be remiss not to at least mention this incredible live album here, official live, 101 Proof by Pantera. Great work here by the band, released in 1997. And finally, coming in at number 1, in my opinion, the best Pantera record, it can only be one here, and that is Cowboys From Hell from 1990. I mean, this is the album that really changed everything for Pantera, and for that matter, changed metal history, you know. The band helping to found the groove metal genre, and, you know, you can't discount the work that Exhorder did as well for the groove metal genre, but on this album here, the band really did help to put groove metal on the map, as they changed directions here and pursued a much more heavy sound, with Phil Anselmo on vocals for his second record with the band, with tracks in here like Cowboys From Hell, Primal Concrete Sledge, Psycho Holiday, Heresy, Cemetery Gates, Domination, Shattered, Clash with Reality, Medicine Man, Great Deep Cut, Message in Blood, The Sleep, and The Art of Shredding. This album is perfect from top to bottom. A 10 out of 10 record for me. You can see the band on the back here. Young, hungry, and super aggressive in the studio here. Not afraid to take chances and explore much heavier sound here on this record, which would ultimately put them on the map. So coming in at number 1, my favorite Pantera record, it's got to be Cowboys From Hell from 1990, one of the most important metal albums of all time. So that wraps up the Ranking From Hell, ranking Pantera studio albums from worst to best, which should be visible right over here. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel down below, turn on the bell for notifications to be notified of a new upload, and let me know down in the comments below, what are some of your favorite Pantera albums? I'd be very interested in hearing your opinions, so let me know all that good stuff down in the comments. Be sure to head over to the community tab and vote for which band's studio albums I'll rank next week here on the channel. Please go out and vote. Every vote is counted, every vote is important, so if you've not voted yet, please go ahead and head over to the community tab. And until next time, it's the CD guy, Johnny Z, signing off. Take care, everybody.